The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment. I sat there, watching my brother Marcus flip through his inheritance papers with that smug smile he'd perfected since childhood, while I held a single yellowed piece of paper, one worthless stock certificate for a company called Meridian Technologies that went under 15 years ago. That was it. That was my entire inheritance from Dad. I guess Dad finally showed us who his favorite really was, Marcus said, not even trying to hide his satisfaction as he counted the blue-chip stocks, the bonds, the real estate holdings worth millions. The rest of my family nodded along, their eyes sliding over me like I was furniture, like I'd always been furniture. I remember staring at that certificate, feeling something strange stirring in my chest. Not anger, not even hurt anymore, just curiosity. Because Dad never did anything without a reason. And as I ran my fingers over the faded ink, over the company seal that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light, I noticed something nobody else did. The certificate had been reissued. Last month. 1 month before Dad died. If you've ever been the invisible child, the one everyone assumes will amount to nothing, the one whose own family treats like a charity case, then you'll understand why I almost threw that certificate away. You'll understand why I almost believed them when they said I was worthless. But you'll also understand why I didn't. Why I couldn't. Because sometimes, when you've been pushed down so many times, you develop a sixth sense for when something doesn't add up. And nothing about this added up. Before I tell you what happened next, before I explain how that worthless piece of paper became my salvation, I need you to understand something. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or written off by the people who should believe in you most, I need you to hear this story. Really hear it. Because what I learned changed everything. And if you stay with me until the end, if you like and share this story with someone who needs to hear it, you might just discover that the things that seem worthless in your life might be worth more than you ever imagined. My name is Sophia Chen, and until 6 months ago, I was the family failure. The art school dropout, the daughter who couldn't hold down a real job, the one who spent her time painting instead of earning, dreaming instead of achieving. At 23, I was everything my family said I was, directionless, impractical, and now, apparently, unworthy of even a proper inheritance. Marcus was different. Marcus was perfect. Harvard MBA at 25, youngest VP at his investment firm by 27, engaged to a senator's daughter. He collected success stories the way some people collect stamps, and he made sure everyone knew it, especially me. You know, Soph, he said that day in the lawyer's office, folding his inheritance papers with practiced precision. Dad probably gave you that certificate as a lesson. Even in death, he's trying to teach you about missed opportunities. Meridian Technologies was his biggest failure, the one investment that tanked. He probably wanted you to understand what happens when you don't take life seriously. My Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister, touched my shoulder with her cold, manicured fingers. Don't take it personally, dear. Your father loved you in his own way. He was practical. He knew Marcus would make something of the wealth. You're more of a free spirit. Free spirit. That's what they called being a disappointment in my family. The reading continued for another hour. Marcus got the house in Connecticut. Our cousin James got the vintage car collection. Aunt Patricia got the art collection. The irony wasn't lost on me that the artist in the family didn't even merit the paintings. Various cousins and business partners received cash, bonds, smaller stock portfolios. Everyone got something real, something valuable. Everyone except me. I sat there, 23 years old, wearing my one good dress that I'd bought secondhand for job interviews that never led anywhere, holding that single piece of paper while my family divided up millions around me. The lawyer, Mr. Brennan, kept glancing at me with something that might have been pity, or maybe confusion. He'd been Dad's lawyer for 30 years, and even he seemed surprised by the distribution. "Is there anything else?" I finally asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Any message? Any explanation?" Mr. Brennan shifted uncomfortably. "Your father did leave a note with your bequest, Miss Chen. He pulled out an envelope, handed it to me with the same careful movements you'd use with something fragile or dangerous. Inside was Dad's handwriting, just 4 words. "Look deeper, my artist." That was it. 4 words and a worthless stock certificate. Marcus actually laughed. "Look deeper? Into what? A dead company?" Classic Dad. Even his final words to you are a riddle nobody can solve. But here's the thing about being the invisible child, the one nobody expects anything from. You learn to see things others miss. You learn to pay attention to details because nobody's paying attention to you. And something about those 4 words, something about the way Dad called me my artist, when he'd spent 20 years telling me art was a waste of time, made me pocket that certificate instead of throwing it in the trash. The family dinner that night was brutal. We gathered at Marcus's penthouse. Of course, it had to be at his place, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, its marble counters and perfect lighting. The whole family was there to celebrate Dad's life, but really, it was to celebrate their inheritances. "So, Sophia," our cousin James said, over his 3rd glass of champagne, "what are you going to do with your fortune? Frame it?" The table erupted in laughter. "Maybe she can use it as inspiration for her next painting," Aunt Patricia added. "Call it Still Life with Dead Stock." More laughter, always more laughter, at my expense, at my dreams, at my existence. Marcus raised his glass. To Dad, who knew how to match the inheritance to the child. To those who can build, he gave the tools. To those who dream, he gave a dream. They all toasted. To my father, to their fortune, to my humiliation. I excused myself to the bathroom, but I didn't go there. I went to Marcus's home office, because of course he had a home office in his apartment, and I did something I'd never done before. I Googled Meridian Technologies. The first 100 results were about its spectacular failure in 2009. A biotech company that promised revolutionary cancer treatment went public, soared, then crashed when their main drug failed FDA trials. Investors lost everything. Dad had been one of them. He'd put $2 million into it, back when $2 million was half his net worth. But then, on page 12 of the search results, I found something odd. A filing with the Delaware Secretary of State. Meridian Technologies LLC had been reincorporated. 3 months ago, 2 months before Dad died. My hands shook as I kept searching. No news, no announcements, nothing public. But there were patent filings, dozens of them, all in the last 6 months. All for variations of the same technology that had failed 15 years ago, but with crucial modifications. Find what you're looking for? I spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, that superior smile playing on his lips. "Just checking my email," I said. "On my computer, when you have a phone?" He walked over, glanced at the screen. "Still researching your worthless inheritance? Sophia, let it go. It's dead. The company, the stock, Dad's faith in you, it's all dead." That's when I noticed something. Marcus wasn't gloating. He was nervous? His eyes kept flicking to the screen, to the patent numbers I'd written on his notepad. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew about the reincorporation." His smile faltered for just a second. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I care about a dead company?" But I saw it. That tell he'd had since we were kids, that little twitch in his left eye when he was lying. "You researched it too. You knew Dad gave me this certificate, and you looked into it. You're imagining things." As usual. But he was already moving to the computer, closing the browser windows. "You should go back to the party. People are asking where you are." "No, they're not." He paused. "No," he admitted, "they're not." We stood there for a moment, brother and sister, success and failure, visible and invisible. "Whatever you think you found," he said finally, "it doesn't matter. The certificate is worthless, even if the company exists again. Your shares are from the old corporation. They didn't transfer. I had our legal team check." "Our legal team?" "Dad's legal team. My legal team now, I suppose." He straightened his tie, that gesture he did when he was about to deliver what he thought was a killing blow. I wanted to make sure there were no complications with the estate, no surprises. And there aren't. Your certificate is a memento, nothing more. A piece of paper commemorating Dad's biggest failure, given to his biggest disappointment. The words should have hurt. A week ago, they would have destroyed me. But standing there, seeing his nervousness, his need to convince me the certificate was worthless, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Then you won't mind if I keep researching," I said, "since it's worthless anyway." "Research all you want. Waste your time like you've wasted your life." He gestured toward the door, "But do it on your own computer. Some of us have real work to do." I left his office, but I didn't go back to the party. I went home to my studio apartment in Queens, the one where the radiator clanged all night and the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbors' TV shows. I sat on my pull-out couch bed, holding that certificate, and I did what Dad told me to do. I looked deeper. The thing about Meridian Technologies that nobody understood, nobody except maybe Dad, was that it wasn't really a failure. The science was sound. The treatment worked. The FDA rejection wasn't because the drug was ineffective. It was because of a contamination in one batch during trials. A manufacturing error, not a scientific one. I found this in a medical journal archived from 2010, buried in the footnotes of an article about FDA trial procedures. The lead scientist, Dr. Sarah Winters, had tried to get new trials approved, but by then, the company was bankrupt, investors had fled, and she couldn't get funding. But Dr. Winters hadn't given up. I found her trail through patent filings, research papers, small mentions in biotech newsletters. She'd spent 15 years refining the process, working with a skeleton team, funded by, I had to read it 3 times to believe it, funded by Chen Holdings, by my father. He'd been secretly funding her research for 15 years, pouring money into a dead company, keeping it on life support, believing in something everyone else had written off, just like me. The parallel was so obvious it hurt. Dad, the man who told me art was impractical, who said I needed to get a real job, who seemed to favor Marcus at every turn, he'd been secretly nurturing a failed dream for 15 years. I stayed up all night researching. By morning, I'd pieced together enough to understand what was happening. Meridian Technologies had completed new trials, successful ones. They were preparing to file with the FDA again. And if approved, when approved, based on the data I was seeing, they were planning to go public. But here was the problem Marcus had mentioned. My certificate was for the old company, the dead one. It shouldn't be worth anything. Unless... I called Mr. Brennan at 7 a.m. He sounded surprised to hear from me. "Miss Chen, how can I help you?" "The certificate my father left me. You said he had it reissued last month?" "Yes, that's correct. He was very specific about it." "Reissued? Not replaced?" There was a pause. "I'm not sure I understand the distinction. Did he have a new certificate created, or did he have the old one legally reissued with updated authentication?" "I would have to check the paperwork, but..." "Hold on." I heard rustling. "Yes, here it is. He had the original certificate legally reissued and authenticated. He also had it... Oh, what? He had it converted." My heart stopped. "Converted to what?" "According to this, he executed a conversion agreement 3 months ago. Your certificate, Miss Chen, represents shares in the original Meridian Technologies that were automatically converted to shares in the new incorporation under a grandfather clause in the restructuring agreement." "How many shares?" "Your certificate represents 100,000 shares. And what percentage of the company is that?" "In the old company, it was 0.5%. In the new company..." He paused, and I heard typing. "Miss Chen, in the new company, due to the reduction in total shares issued, your certificate represents 15% ownership." I dropped the phone. 15% of a company about to go public, of a company whose technology could revolutionize cancer treatment. I picked up the phone again. "Mr. Brennan, does Marcus know about this?" I cannot discuss what other family members may or may not know. But he had the legal team investigate the certificate. I'm aware that inquiries were made. And what were they told? Mr. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. They were told what they asked, Miss Chen. They asked if the old certificate had any value. It doesn't. The old certificate is worthless. But mine isn't an old certificate anymore. No, your father made sure of that. He was very particular about the timing and the process. I thought about Dad's note. Look deeper, my artist. He'd known. He'd known Marcus would investigate, would ask the wrong questions, would assume he knew everything, and he'd known I would look deeper. Mr. Brennan, is there anything else you can tell me? Only that your father left additional instructions regarding your inheritance. They were to be released only if you contacted me about the certificate within 6 months of his death. What instructions? There's a meeting scheduled for next Monday at Meridian Technologies. Dr. Winters is expecting you. Your father thought you might want to meet the person whose dream he'd been funding. He said you would understand each other. I hung up and sat in my tiny apartment on my uncomfortable couch bed, holding a piece of paper that was about to change everything. But first, I had a decision to make. I could tell Marcus, tell the family, prove to them all that Dad hadn't forgotten me, that I wasn't worthless, that I was about to be wealthier than any of them. Or I could wait. I waited. The next few weeks were torture and ecstasy combined. I met with Dr. Winters, a brilliant woman in her 60s who'd spent 15 years being called a failure, a has-been, a dreamer who couldn't let go. Sound familiar? Your father was the only one who believed, she told me over coffee in her modest office. Everyone else walked away after the FDA rejection. But he saw what I saw, that we were one step away from breakthrough, not failure. She showed me the new trial results, the FDA approval that was pending, but, according to their lawyers, virtually guaranteed. The investment banks already circling, preparing for an IPO that could value the company at over $1 billion. My 15% would be worth over $150 million. Why did he keep it secret? I asked. Why not tell anyone? Dr. Winters smiled. He said he wanted to prove a point, that the things that look like failures are sometimes just success waiting for someone patient enough to nurture it. He talked about you, you know. He did? All the time. His artist daughter. He was so proud of your persistence, your refusal to give up on your art even when everyone told you to be practical. He never said that to me. He said he couldn't, that if he encouraged you, his family would think he was playing favorites. But he also said you didn't need his encouragement, that you had something more valuable, the ability to believe in yourself when no one else did. I cried in that office. 15 years of feeling unseen, and it turned out Dad had been watching all along. The IPO was announced 3 weeks later. Meridian Technologies, risen from the dead with a revolutionary cancer treatment that had just received FDA fast-track approval. The initial valuation was even higher than predicted, $2 billion. The financial news covered it as the comeback story of the decade. A company that had failed spectacularly, only to return with improved technology that could save millions of lives. I wasn't mentioned in any of the articles. Neither was Dad. We were silent partners, invisible shareholders. But Marcus knew. He called me the morning the IPO was announced. You knew, he said without preamble. You've known for weeks. Known what? I asked, painting in my studio. My new studio, the one I'd just put a deposit on in Manhattan, though he didn't know that yet. Don't play dumb, Sophia. I saw the shareholder reports. Oh, that? You own 15% of a company valued at $2 billion, and you say, oh, that? Would you prefer I gloat? The way you did at the will reading? Silence. Then, the family doesn't know yet. No. Are you going to tell them? I thought about it. I'm having a gathering next week. A small exhibition of my new paintings. Everyone's invited. Your paintings? Sophia, you're worth $300 million and you're still wasting time with art? Yes, I said simply. I am. Will you come? He hung up, but he came. They all came, to the gallery in Soho that I'd rented, to see the paintings they'd mocked for years. They came because they were curious, because Marcus had been acting strange, because something was happening they didn't understand. The paintings were all from the last month. Abstracts mostly, but if you looked deeper, and I'd learned the value of looking deeper, you could see the story. A certificate dissolving into DNA strands, a phoenix rising from paper ashes, a girl, invisible, becoming radiant. These are actually quite good, Aunt Patricia said, surprised despite herself. Thank you, I said. Dad thought so too. Your father never saw these. No, but he saw me, even when none of you did. Marcus stood apart from the others, staring at the centerpiece painting. It was the largest, most ambitious piece I'd ever created. A family portrait, but abstract. Figures in shadow and light, some solid and defined, others translucent, barely there. But if you looked closely, the translucent figure in the corner was holding something that blazed with gold. Is that supposed to be us? He asked. It's called inheritance, I said. And the gold? What do you think it is? He was quiet for a long moment. I was wrong, he said finally. About the certificate. About you. Yes. I checked the wrong things. Asked the wrong questions. Yes. Dad knew I would. Yes. He played me. No, I said. He knew you, just like he knew me. He gave you what you could handle, straightforward wealth, traditional success. And he gave me what I needed, a puzzle to solve, a dream to believe in, proof that things that look worthless can be priceless. When are you going to tell them? He nodded toward our family, still milling around, making polite noises about art they didn't understand. Now, actually. I clinked a glass, gathering their attention. They turned to me with the kind of polite disinterest they'd perfected over years of family gatherings. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know you're wondering why I invited you here, why the family failure suddenly has an art exhibition. A few uncomfortable laughs. 6 weeks ago at the will reading, you all received your inheritances. Cash, stocks, houses, cars, real things, valuable things. And I received a piece of paper you all thought was worthless. Sophia, Aunt Patricia said, we don't need to rehash. Actually, we do. Because I need to tell you what Dad really left me. I pulled out the certificate, the one I'd had framed. This is a stock certificate for Meridian Technologies. The dead company, Cousin James called out. We know. The resurrected company, I corrected. The one that went public this morning at a $2 billion valuation. The one in which I own 15%. The silence was absolute. That's impossible, Aunt Patricia whispered. $300 million, I said. That's what Dad left me. Not because I was his favorite, but because he knew none of you would look deeper. He knew you'd see a failed company and stop there. But I looked deeper because that's what artists do. We see beyond the surface. You're lying, James said. This is some kind of joke. Marcus spoke up. It's not a joke. I've seen the shareholder reports. They all turned to him, then back to me. The invisible girl, the failure, the disappointment. Dad funded Dr. Sarah Winter's research for 15 years, I continued. He believed in her dream when everyone else called her a failure, just like he believed in mine, even if he couldn't say it out loud. He left you all wealth, but he left me a lesson. That the things that look worthless are sometimes the most valuable, that dreams that seem dead can come back to life, that the people you overlook might be the ones who surprise you. This can't be real, Aunt Patricia said. You can't be worth more than all of us. I am. But here's the thing. It was never about the money. Dad knew that too. The money is nice, don't get me wrong. But what he really gave me was validation. Proof that being different, being a dreamer, being the one nobody expects anything from, that's not a weakness. It's a superpower. I looked at each of them, my family, the ones who'd laughed at me, dismissed me, overlooked me for 23 years. I'm not going to gloat, I said. I'm not going to make you feel the way you made me feel, because that's not who I am. But I am going to ask you to remember this moment. The moment you realized that the person you thought was worthless was worth more than you imagined. And maybe next time you meet someone who doesn't fit your definition of success, you'll look deeper. The exhibition ended shortly after that. They left in a daze, my family, unable to process how their world had shifted. Marcus stayed behind. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Paint," I said. "Travel. Fund other artists who've been told they're wasting their time. Maybe start a foundation for dreamers and misfits." "With $300 million? "With $300 million. He nodded slowly. "I owe you an apology." "You owe me more than that. You owe me 23 years of seeing me as less than. But I don't want your apology, Marcus." "What do you want?" "I want you to learn. I want you to understand that success isn't just about Harvard degrees and corner offices. It's about persistence. It's about believing in something everyone else has given up on. It's about looking deeper. Like Dad did. Like Dad did." We stood. There, brother and sister, no longer success and failure, but just two people who'd inherited different lessons from the same man. "The IPO is going to make you even wealthier," he said. "The stock will probably triple in the first year." "Probably. You could buy and sell me 10 times over." "I could, but I won't, because that's your game, not mine." He left then, and I was alone in the gallery with my paintings, my art. The thing everyone said was a waste of time, displayed in a space I'd rented with money from a certificate everyone thought was worthless. Dad had been dead for 6 weeks, but I'd never felt closer to him. The next morning, I had breakfast with Dr. Winters. She was glowing, her life's work finally recognized, her persistence finally rewarded. "We did it," she said. 15 years of everyone calling me crazy, and we did it." "You did it," I corrected. "You and Dad. And now you. You're part of this now, part of proving that failure is just success that hasn't happened yet." We talked about the future, about the lives that would be saved, about the next generation of treatments already in development. And I realized something. Dad hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a purpose, a connection to something bigger than myself. "He talked about you constantly," Dr. Winters said again, "especially near the end. He said you reminded him of me, of himself. Stubborn, unwilling to give up on what you loved, even when it seemed impractical." "He never told me that." "He left you something else," she said, pulling out an envelope. "He asked me to give this to you if you ever came to see me." Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting. Not 4 words this time, but pages. "My dear Sophia," it began, "if you're reading this, you've looked deeper, just as I knew you would. You've discovered that the certificate wasn't just about money, but about faith, my faith in you, which I could never express while I was alive without causing family conflict. You think I favored Marcus, but the truth is, Marcus never needed my approval. He had the world's approval. You were the one who needed to know that someone believed in you, but you needed to discover it for yourself, not be told. The art you create, the dreams you chase, the person you are, none of it is a waste. It's all valuable. You just needed to believe it. And now, with this inheritance, you have proof. Not the money. Anyone can inherit money. But the fact that I entrusted you with a mystery, knowing you'd solve it. That I gave you something that required patience, faith, and the ability to see beyond the surface. Your family will be shocked. They'll question how the failure became the success. But you were never a failure, my dear. You were just a late bloomer. Like Meridian Technologies. Like Dr. Winters. Like me. Did you know I didn't make my first million until I was 40? That my family called me a dreamer and a fool until then? Use this wealth wisely, not to prove anything to anyone, but to continue being exactly who you are. The world needs more artists, more dreamers, more people who look deeper. All my love, Dad. P.S. Your last painting, the one you gave me for my birthday. It hangs in my office where I could see it every day. It reminded me that success isn't about what others see, but about what you know to be true. I cried again, there in the restaurant, while Dr. Winters held my hand. This woman who'd been called a failure for 15 years, holding the hand of a girl who'd been called a disappointment for 23. "We're the lucky ones," she said. "We know what it's like to be underestimated. We know what it's like to rise." The months that followed were a whirlwind. The stock did triple, then quadrupled. Meridian Technologies became a household name, their treatment saving thousands of lives. My net worth climbed to numbers that seemed imaginary, but I kept painting. I bought a building in Brooklyn and turned it into affordable studios for artists. I started a foundation that funded impractical dreams. I traveled the world, painting landscapes and portraits, finally able to afford the good canvases, the quality brushes, the time to perfect my craft. Marcus and I developed an unexpected friendship. Once the competition was gone, once he didn't have to be the successful one because we both were, he relaxed. He even bought one of my paintings, paid full price, insisted on it. "It's an investment," he said, "in art, in my sister." The family adjusted, slowly, some with grace, others with resentment. Aunt Patricia still makes comments about how lucky I was, how I fell into wealth. I let her. She needs to believe it was luck, not Dad's faith in me, not my willingness to look deeper. Cousin James asked me for a loan once. I gave it to him, no strings attached. He was shocked. "Why?" he asked. "After how I treated you." "Because holding on to anger is like holding on to a worthless stock certificate," I said. "Sometimes you have to let go of the old to make room for the new." But the best part, the part that still makes me smile, happened 6 months after the IPO. I was having dinner with my old roommate from art school, Emma, the only person who'd believed in my art when even I didn't. I just bought her a studio space, set her up with a year's worth of supplies. "I can't accept this," she said. "It's too much." "It's not enough," I told her. "You kept me sane when everyone said I was wasting my life. You made me ramen when I couldn't afford food. You believed in me." "That's what friends do." "No," I said. "That's what family is supposed to do. You were my real family when my blood family couldn't see me." We were at a nice restaurant, the kind where they have sommeliers and multiple forks when I saw them. My entire family having dinner at a large table across the room. They didn't see me at first. I was still invisible to them out of habit. But then a man approached their table, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, doing a story on Meridian Technologies. "I'm looking for Sophia Chen," he said. "I was told she might be here with you." "Sophia?" Aunt Patricia laughed. "Why would you want to talk to her?" "She's the largest individual shareholder in one of the most successful biotech IPOs in history. She's also launching a foundation that's revolutionizing how we fund experimental research in art. She's one of the most interesting success stories of the year." They all turned then, scanning the restaurant, and found me. The invisible girl, visible at last. I waved. The reporter came over, and I gave him his interview. About Dad's faith, about Dr. Winters' persistence, about the importance of believing in things others have written off. My family listened from their table, finally hearing my story not as family disappointment, but as what it really was. A story of faith rewarded, of patience vindicated, of dreams realized. "What would you tell someone who feels overlooked or underestimated?" the reporter asked. I thought about it. I'd tell them that their worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. That sometimes the things that look like failures are just successes waiting for the right moment. That being invisible can be a superpower if you use it to observe, to learn, to grow without the pressure of constant scrutiny. "And what about your father? What do you think he would say if he could see you now?" I smiled. "He can see me. He always could. He just knew I needed to learn to see myself first." The article ran a week later. "The Artist Who Inherited a Dream" was the headline. It told the whole story. the will reading, the worthless certificate, the resurrection of Meridian Technologies. My journey from invisible to undeniable. Marcus called me after it published. You didn't mention how I treated you, how any of us treated you. What would be the point? I asked. You're my family, flawed, sometimes cruel, but family. And besides, the story isn't about you. It was never about any of you. It was about Dad and me, about faith and patience, about looking deeper. I've been thinking about that, he said, about looking deeper. I've been so focused on the surface my whole life. The obvious success, the traditional path. I wonder what I've missed. It's never too late to start looking. Maybe you could teach me how to see like an artist. I'd like that. We started having weekly lunches, Marcus and I. I taught him about art, about seeing shadows and light, about finding beauty in unexpected places. He taught me about traditional investing, about reading markets, about building wealth systematically. We were both teachers and students finally. The foundation I started has funded 12 impossible projects so far. 3 have failed completely. 5 are struggling, but 4 are showing promise, including a composer who's creating symphonies for deaf audiences using vibration and visual elements, and a scientist working on biodegradable plastics made from seaweed. You're going to lose money on most of these, Marcus warned. Dad lost money on Meridian for 15 years, I reminded him, but the one success will make up for all the failures. And even if it doesn't, even if they all fail, at least these dreamers will know someone believed in them. Do you know how powerful that is, to have just one person believe in your impossible dream? Dr. Winters and I have become close friends. She's like the aunt I should have had, the one who understands that success isn't always linear, that sometimes you have to fail for 15 years before you succeed. Your father would be so proud, she tells me often, not of the money, but of how you've handled it, how you've stayed yourself. I still paint every day. My work sells now, partly because of my story, I'm sure, but also because I finally have the confidence to put my whole self into it. The invisible girl is gone, replaced by someone who knows her worth isn't determined by others' opinions. Last week was the anniversary of Dad's death. The family gathered at his grave, as we always do, but this time was different. This time, instead of standing in the back, invisible, I stood next to Marcus. I miss him, I said. So do I. I wish I could tell him I understand now, about you, about what he was trying to teach us. He knows, Aunt Patricia said, surprising us both. He always knew more than we gave him credit for. She handed me a small canvas bag. I found this in the art collection he left me. It was wrapped separately, with a note that said to give it to you on the 1st anniversary. Inside was one of my earliest paintings, one I'd done at 16 before art school, before the family had decided I was wasting my time. It was rough, amateur, but passionate. And on the back, in Dad's handwriting, Sophia's first masterpiece, worth more than gold. He'd kept it. All those years of telling me art was impractical, and he'd kept my first real attempt. He loved you, Aunt Patricia said. He just didn't know how to show it without the rest of us feeling neglected. So he showed it the only way he could, by believing in your future when none of us could see it. Including me, I admitted. We stood there, the Chen family, no longer divided into successes and failures, but just people who'd learned that worth comes in many forms. That night I had dinner with Emma and some other artist friends. We talked about our projects, our dreams, our fears that were not good enough. You know what I learned from all this? I told them. That the people who call you a failure are usually just afraid of their own dreams. That the ones who say you're wasting your time are often wasting their own on things that don't matter to them. That being, invisible means you can become anything, because no one's watching closely enough to stop you. Easy to say when you're worth $1 billion, one of them joked. I was worth the same amount before the money, I said. I just didn't know it, and neither did anyone else, but Dad knew, and more importantly, he made sure I'd eventually know too. How? By giving me something that looked worthless but required faith to unlock. By teaching me that the best things in life require patience, vision, and the ability to see beyond the surface. By showing me that being underestimated is actually a gift. It means you get to surprise everyone, including yourself. The Meridian stock continues to climb. The company is developing 3 new treatments, all showing incredible promise. My 15% is now worth over $2 billion. It's an absurd amount of money, more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I think about Dr. Winters, working alone for 15 years, funded by a man who believed in second chances. I think about Dad, secretly supporting a dream everyone else had abandoned. I think about myself, painting in my tiny apartment. Sure, I was a disappointment. And I realized that money was never the inheritance. The inheritance was the lesson, that worth isn't determined by market value, that failure is often just success in disguise, that the things that seem dead can be resurrected with enough faith and patience. I've started visiting schools, talking to kids who feel invisible, who think they're disappointments. I tell them my story, not the money part, that's just the headline, but the real story. The story of a girl whose father loved her so much, he crafted an elaborate puzzle to teach her her own worth. The story of a certificate that looked like nothing but contained everything. The story of looking deeper. What if we look deeper and find nothing? One kid asked me. Then you look deeper still, I said, because there's always something there. Sometimes it's hidden under so many layers of other people's opinions that you forget it exists. But it's there. Your worth, your talent, your purpose. It's all there. You just have to be patient enough to find it. Marcus has started his own foundation now, funding traditional businesses, but with a twist. He only invests in companies run by people who failed before. Failure is experience, he says now. It's education. It's proof you tried something worth trying. We joke sometimes that Dad planned all of this, that he knew Marcus would learn humility, that I would learn confidence, that the family would learn to look beyond the surface. Maybe he did, or maybe he just loved his children enough to give them what they needed, not what they wanted. The certificate hangs in my studio now, framed next to my first painting, the one Dad kept. 2 pieces of paper that look worthless but changed everything. Visitors always ask about them. They're my inheritance. I tell them. They must be worth a fortune. They are, I say, but not in the way you think. Because the truth is, if the Meridian stock crashed tomorrow, if I lost every penny, I'd still have the real inheritance, the knowledge that I was never worthless, that Dad saw me even when I was invisible, that sometimes the best gifts come disguised as disappointments. Last month, a young woman came to my foundation. She had an idea for a new kind of sustainable farming, but everyone told her it was impossible, impractical, a waste of time. She reminded me of Dr. Winters. She reminded me of myself. Why should I believe in this? I asked her, even though I'd already decided to fund her. Because you know what it's like, she said. To have a dream everyone thinks is dead, to be the person everyone overlooks, to believe in something when no one else does. Yes, I said. I do. I gave her the funding, but I also gave her something else, Dad's letter to me, a copy of it. Read this when everyone tells you you're wasting your time, I said. Remember that the most successful people are often the ones who were told they'd never succeed. She cried when she read it. Your father sounds amazing. He was complicated, I said. He made mistakes. He played favorites, or seemed to. He couldn't always say what he felt, but he loved deeply, believed fiercely, and taught brilliantly, even if his lessons took years to understand. She left with her funding and the letter, another dreamer given a chance to prove the doubters wrong. Emma asked me once if I ever regret the years of being invisible, of being the family disappointment. No, I said, because those years taught me empathy. They taught me to see other invisible people. They taught me that worth isn't about being seen, but about being true to yourself even when no one's watching. But it hurt. Of course it hurt, but pain can be a teacher too. It taught me to be kind, to look deeper, to never assume someone is worthless just because they don't fit the traditional definition of success. The truth is, I'm grateful for all of it. For the years of invisibility that taught me to observe, for the family that overlooked me because it taught me to find my own worth, for the certificate that looked like nothing because it taught me that appearance and reality are often different things. And mostly, I'm grateful for Dad, for his complicated, imperfect, brilliant way of loving me, for the puzzle he left me to solve, for believing in my ability to look deeper. The Meridian Technologies story has become legendary in business schools now. The company that died and was resurrected, the worthless certificate worth billions, the failed scientist who changed medicine, the invisible daughter who became impossible to ignore. But they usually miss the real story. The real story isn't about money or success or vindication. It's about faith. Dad's faith in Dr. Winters, Dr. Winters' faith in her science, my faith in the certificate. And underneath it all, the faith that things that seem worthless might be priceless, that people who seem invisible might be invaluable, that dreams that seem dead might just be sleeping. I think about that day in the lawyer's office sometimes, how Marcus smiled at his millions while I held a single piece of paper, how the family laughed at my inheritance, how I almost threw it away. What if I had? What if I hadn't looked deeper? But I did, because that's what artists do. We see beyond the surface. We find beauty in the discarded. We believe in the impossible. And sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible becomes inevitable. Next week is the 3-year anniversary of Dad's death. The family will gather again, as we always do. But this time I'm bringing something. The original certificate, the one everyone thought was worthless. I'm going to tell them the whole story, the parts I've never shared, about Dad's 15 years of secret funding, about Dr. Winters' persistence, about the nights I spent researching, hoping, believing, not to gloat, never to gloat, but to honor Dad's memory properly, to make sure they understand that his greatest gift wasn't the money he left any of us, but the lessons hidden in each inheritance. Marcus got traditional wealth and learned its limitations. Aunt Patricia got art and learned to appreciate what she'd dismissed. The others got various assets and learned their own lessons. But I got the best lesson of all, that being underestimated is a superpower if you know how to use it. That patience can turn failure into fortune. That looking deeper can reveal treasures everyone else missed. The certificate taught me to believe in things that seem dead. Dad taught me to believe in myself when no one else did. And life taught me that the best revenge against those who call you worthless is not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. I still paint every day. My studio is nicer now, my supplies better, my time my own. But the passion is the same. The need to create, to express, to see beyond the surface, that hasn't changed. What has changed is that now, when young artists come to me, discouraged and overlooked, I can tell them with absolute certainty, your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it. Your dreams are not dead just because others call them worthless. Your time is not wasted just because others don't understand what you're building. Look deeper. Always look deeper, because sometimes a worthless certificate is worth billions. Sometimes the invisible daughter inherits everything. Sometimes the failure was just success waiting for its moment. And sometimes a father's love is so deep, so complex, so perfect that it takes death and resurrection to fully understand it. That's my story. The story of a certificate everyone thought was worthless, a daughter everyone thought was a disappointment, and a father who knew better than everyone. The story of looking deeper and finding gold. End. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, and if you believe that everyone deserves to have their true worth seen, please like this video and share why it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below and tell me, what was the moment in the story that resonated with you the most? And if you want more powerful stories about finding your strength and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.